Hey, Paul, thanks for taking the time to do this.
Okay. You're welcome.
Paul, how is it that you became aware of deferred sales trusts?
Uh, while I was researching that, I am on a board of a charity, and this guy specializes in this process that he explained to me a couple times or tried and then got frustrated that I didn't get it. And my experience has always been that if someone tries to explain something to you and they're unsuccessful, it's because they don't really understand it themselves. And so I took some of the components and I researched it, and I found out he was trying to get me into a DST that he was offering, and he uh, and then I found out. So then I'd researched deferred sales trust, and then I asked him, "Is that a deferred sales trust?" And he, well, yeah. So basically, again, there's another guy who's trying to sell you something, put your net worth into it or a significant part, and he's not really forthcoming. And that,
He was selling corporate trustee services?
yes, and he was an accountant, and he buddied up with a lawyer, and so the two of them were going to, you know, manage, you know, manage your assets, for your benefit, of course.
So, Paul, was it my work that you turned you on to the seller appointed trustees that saves 1.5% on trustee commissions?
Well, exactly. And, since I got involved with you on that deferred sales trust, I and you pointed out that if you're a self-trustee, you essentially, or not self-trustee, but you choose the trustee. I'm using my son-in-law. Uh, and and the deal is that his financial interest and my interests are aligned, which is always good when you get involved in a relationship financially, to have your interests aligned, not oppositional. The more money they make, the less you have left. And I did, I did some figures. Like I have a grandson, and I'm looking at doing a life insurance policy for him. Uh, I've taken the first steps towards that, and since mutual life insurance funds, they typically pay 5%. Well, if I had a trustee managing this arrangement, it would be my return would be 3.5% a year versus 5% a year, and uh, at 5% a year, it takes 14 years to double, which means Junior gets five doublings by the time he turns 72, which if you put 100,000 in a life insurance policy, which is a lot of money in my book, but uh, it's not impossible for somebody who's 70 years old to come up with, if unless they've been buying Ferraris. Uh, but that turns out to 3.2 million when Junior cash value on the life insurance policy when he's 72. If instead I get the fund managed by a trustee who's pulling down 1.5%, instead of a 5% return, it goes to 3.5%, which means it's 20 years to double instead of 14, which means Junior gets 4x at 80 years old, not 72, but at 80, which means he's looking at 1.6 when he turns 80 versus 3.2 when he turns 72. Just look at those numbers. They're getting one of the doublings of your, net worth. And so, who's going to tell you that up front, right? And so, uh, I did not know was actually possible until I read your book, which, I mean, you talk about being forthright with all of the benefits uh, and the pitfalls. Well, by opening the door to all the benefits, then any logical person can see why somebody's so generous with their time when they're looking at 1.5% of your net worth for umpteen years into the future. Uh, and being a little mysterious about this and that. And Anyway, so yeah, it was your book essentially that opened up the option, and plus you were very forthcoming with the information about uh, the trust details themselves, what state to incorporate in, et cetera, et cetera.
Paul, what can you share about your experience working with my firm?
Well, I would say number one, you're the most forthcoming source for this type of investment uh, by far that I've found. Um, and the the ability to have a deferred sales trust is a big win. And but when you add to that the ability to have a very friendly uh, trustee who's not taking 1.5%, that essentially turbocharges the trust. Because you're like, for my grandson, again, I'm looking at 3.2 million at the age of 72 versus 1 point half of that amount 8 years later. And as people hit 70, they start to go like, hey, wait a second. I'm in not great shape now. I wonder what it's going to be like when I'm 80. And the stretch between 72 and 80 can be a real rough stretch. So hanging out for another 8 years, which is what, 11% of your life at the age of 72 for half the money, I don't know. I'm not sure my son-in-law or his kid would think that would be the winning move.
Well, Paul, I really appreciate you taking the time to do this. You are such a pleasure to work
Would
with.
you would would you write a note to my wife, please? You don't have to sign it.
Oh, I did. She said she already loved you very much.
That's a good one. All right, buddy. God bless. Take care. Bye bye.